Hello and welcome back to Autism at Home and our series on making learning fun. I'm Jochebed Isaacs from Early Autism Project Malaysia, and this series is part of our non-profit Autism at Home online resource platform. So far in this series, we have introduced the topic and the concept of fear factor versus fun factor in teaching. We have also talked about being fun and how to build a strong rapport with your child, how to pair yourself with reinforcement, and some common mistakes to look out for. Today, we will answer the question of how to increase your child's interests, especially when it seems like they're not interested in anything at all. Many children with autism already present with delays compared to typical children. This means they need to work extra hard to try and catch up and learn the same skills, which means we need to keep motivation really high and keep the fun factor right up there. At the same time though, because of the spectrum, some children are more motivated than others. And definitely the more options of interest and reinforcement we have, the easier it is to teach a child on the spectrum. So if you were following the last lesson closely, by now you should have a good list going of all the things your child likes. Or you might have a very limited list, perhaps even less than the number of fingers on your hand. Sometimes having lots of fun interests and motivation can be particularly tricky if your child happens to fall into one of these two categories: children with very limited interests, or children who are mainly interested in self-stimulatory, or what we call stimming behaviors. Today's lesson introduces you to how to increase interest, regardless of whether your child already has some or very few to begin with. The first step to increasing interest is to look at different ways you can play the same thing. This is the least intrusive way because you're not asking your child to like something new. You're merely changing things up a bit so your child doesn't get stuck in the same way of playing. For example, perhaps you've got a child who loves playing Play-Doh, but you notice all they seem to do is roll it or press it. Try thinking of 3 new ways you can play the same thing. Drawing up a mind map can be very helpful here. Perhaps we can bring in shapes to cut out shapes in the Play-Doh. Or perhaps we can bring in plates and utensils and pretend to serve food. Or perhaps we can create objects like a really long snake or a snowman. The possibilities are endless. All it takes is a little creativity and maybe a little help from the internet. Do look out. Some children with autism may be very particular about the way they play. This does not mean to avoid introducing new ways to play. Your child may just need these new changes in smaller steps or be reinforced for tolerating them. A second way to increase interest is to try out plays that are similar in nature to what your child already likes. For example, does your child really like taking long showers or baths or spends hours in the pool? This might suggest they really like play with a water element to it. Or does your child really like books with audio buttons or playing children's instruments? Perhaps they like play with a music or sound element to it. Finding patterns in what they play will provide you clues in finding plays that are already similar to that. Now let's take the example of the child who loves long showers and baths. Of course, for any parent, it can be a real headache if your child likes taking 5 showers a day or will not leave the pool until they get a good 4 hours in. Perhaps try out sensory water play times. This can be as simple as using a big container filled with water and letting them play to their heart's content. Now combine it with tip number 1 and try adding in different toys, soap, or even food coloring. This could be a good alternative play that is still similar in nature while saving you on your water bill. Now, for any families watching whose children's interests are so limited that they would really rather just spend their whole day stimming, don't worry, we haven't forgotten about you. It is one thing to find musical instruments if you notice your child likes those kinds of toys, but another thing to figure out how to find new plays for a child who only wants to jump or crash or flap their hands. Here is just a non-exhaustive list of all the kinds of stimming one might see in a child with autism. An important thing to understand about stimming is that it is a genuine sensory need. Now, what is a sensory need? We've heard of the 5 senses: touch, sight, smell, hearing, and taste. On top of that, there are 2 others we commonly miss: proprioception, or body awareness. This is usually being aware of how much pressure our body is receiving, like when we're lying on a bed or carrying weights on our hands. Then the sense of balance, the way our body tells us where it is in relation to gravity, like when you feel very balanced standing on 2 feet versus balancing on a tightrope. So really, there are 7 senses. Stimming might happen for a variety of reasons, such as when the child with autism feels over or undersensitive to the world around them, or when they feel anxious or excited about something. The truth is that we all have sensory needs. Some of us like the air condition to be at 25 Celsius. Some of us prefer it much lower. Some of us prefer to sleep on really soft beds, whereas some of us prefer hard beds. Children with autism also have sensory needs, just that they may need it at a much higher or lower amount than what a typical person would need. Hence, it can be difficult and almost unfair to them to eliminate stimming completely. Rather, we focus our energies on helping them manage their stimming. One way to do this is by finding replacement activities. Now, before we move on, it's important to know that there are actually many schools of thoughts and opinions about stimming. Some people believe it should be reduced. Some people believe it should be encouraged. We at EAP tend to veer on the side of helping to reduce or contain stimming, especially when those behaviors can really affect the child's attention or even be self-injurious. So don't be surprised if you find various groups and entire discussion forums on this sensitive topic online. We will guide you on how to first identify what type of sensory need your child is seeking when they stim, and second, how to find appropriate ways to meet those needs with replacement activities. Many of these ideas are actually taken from a page called Helpful Handy Hints for Finding Reinforcers, which can be found in the Picture Exchange Communication Manual by Frost and Bondi. Let's take a look again at this chart. Typically, a stimming behavior can be to meet at least one of these sensory needs, or sometimes even more than one. For example, a child who enjoys flicking their fingers in front of their eyes may really like watching the motion of something moving very quickly. This could be a visual need. Or a child who is always covering their ears might be oversensitive to sounds and could benefit from play and environments which are more quiet. Your child might have sensory needs across all the categories, or more likely may have 1 or 2 sensory needs that affect them more than others. Once you've identified the sensory need your child has, the second step is to find appropriate play that still gives them the sensory need they are looking for. So here are just a few examples for each type of sensory need. For children who may love crashing into things or deep pressure on specific parts of their body, try incorporating beanbags or gym balls at home that they can receive pressure or massages from. Some children who love the way their body feels at different positions may like having balance beams around the home. For children who love particular textures, for example, very smooth textures or rough textures, consider looking for books or even creating your own sensory boards to give them an outlet. If your child has a tendency to like watching things move, like the fan or the wheels on a car, consider trying interactive plays like spinning or spinning tops. For children who tend to pick things up and smell them, including things like a car toy, their fingers, or even other people's hair, experiment with scented sensory play, adding essential oils or herbs to rice play. Children who are constantly seeking certain sounds, like holding up a rattle toy to their ear, might take to toys with similar sounds or even a variety of sounds. Finally, some children with autism may have very specific preferences for certain types of tastes and textures. Children who love salty food would likely take on to varieties of chip flavors. This itself can be a good source of reinforcement for teaching them new skills. But of course, everything in moderation. Now, these are just a few examples of stimming behaviors and some suggested activities that can help. There are so many others out there. Feel free to download a bigger list of sensory play ideas from the corresponding article on our website. There are some situations when even with all your efforts, your child still only wants to stim. When we have encountered these situations with the families we work with, as a final resort, we allow the child to stim as a reward. Sometimes in the interest of teaching a child a necessary skill, like learning to sit nicely, it may not be practical to hold out and wait until you find something alternative they like. The reward may end up being the stimming itself. However, don't give up and still continue to expose your child to new activities, even when the child at first is primarily being rewarded with stimming. Now have a look at some of these case scenarios and see if you can identify first what the child's sensory need is, and second, what plays they might be interested in.
Pop quiz. Wayne is a 3-year-old boy who enjoys climbing on furniture and walking along the edge of the sofa and tables. Which of the below could be the sensory need Wayne has? Visual, texture, balance, or taste? The closest answer would be C, balance. It sounds like Wayne likes either the sensation of climbing on things or balancing himself. What replacement play would be suitable for Wayne? Beanbags, musical instruments, spinner toy, or balance beams? It would be worth trying out balance beams with Wayne, or even taking him to playlands where there is a lot of climbing and balancing involved. Sonia is a 5-year-old girl who tends to chew almost anything hard she can find in her home, be it her Barbie dolls, her fingernails, or the edges of chairs. Which of the below could be the sensory needs Sonia has? Visual, texture, smell, or taste? This one is a tricky one. The more likely answer could be texture, specifically hard ones. What replacement play would be suitable for Sonia? Puzzles, water play, spicy foods, or crunchy foods? It isn't hard to try out crunchy foods with Sonia as a replacement if it is hard texture she's seeking. Another idea would be to invest in a tita, which is usually a sturdy object that can be worn around the neck for the child to have something within reach if they feel the need to chew.
Now, you might find that even when introducing a different way to play or finding a replacement activity to stimming, your child may still not take on to the new activity or even push it away. This is normal. We used to work with a child who absolutely hated water play, but with persistence and making it fun, it became their top requested play. There are 2 ways we go about encouraging them to like a new play. First, pair the new play activity with something they already really like. For example, perhaps a child really likes playing pretend cooking. In this example, the therapist introduces snow spray, which is something new. When the child feels the new addition has made their play even more exciting, this will help them develop a positive association with the new play. Then they might be more willing to play with snow spray on its own. Secondly, Reinforce your child for trying the new play using the first then method. In this example, the therapist uses first then to expose their child to a new video and also starts at a very short duration. This can be a useful technique for any parent looking to reduce your child's obsession with specific play or toys or videos by starting at really short durations, then building up that duration with the less preferred play. And of course, a very important tip for all circumstances, try to market your play. Think of yourself as a salesperson promoting a new product. If we don't seem genuinely excited by this new play, how can we expect our child to feel so?
Pop quiz. Check your understanding with a couple more questions. Aaron is a 4-year-old boy who only likes stacking Lego blocks on top of each other. So his parents bought him some simple Lego model pictures to follow. Which strategy is Aaron's parents using to expand Aaron's interests? Trying different ways to play, similar plays, or neither? The answer is A. Trying different ways to play. Aaron's parents recognize he really likes Legos and are hoping to show him new ways he can play the same thing. Priya's parents have been trying to get her to watch other cartoons besides Peppa Pig. They've tried to change the program every time she watches Peppa Pig, but Priya would throw herself on the ground and start screaming. What method should Priya's parents try to expand her cartoon interests? Show different types of Peppa Pig cartoons? Or use the first then method? B. The first then method might be more appropriate for Priya. That is, to watch a very short amount of a less preferred cartoon, followed by having her usual time with Peppa Pig, and slowly building up from there. An additional tip is to explore cartoons that are similar in look and style to Peppa Pig, so the difference does not seem so large.
Now it's your turn. By now, if you've been following the lessons in this series, you would have a list of activities and plays that you know your child really likes. Or you have an activity you would like to try to replace a stimming behavior. Try using at least one of these two strategies to expand on what they like, either by changing up the way you already play something or finding something similar. Secondly, use one or both of the strategies to increase their interest in this new play, whether it is to pair it with what they already like and build that positive association, or reinforce them for being willing to try the new play. Finally, regardless of whether you are a parent of a child who has lots of interests or very few, keep the bar high. Interests rise and fall with time and seasons. What your child likes today may not be what they like tomorrow. It's easy to keep doing the same thing with your child again and again. But remember that your child with autism is growing and changing. Maybe they won't be able to tell you when they need a change, or even figure out on their own when they need one. That's up to us as the adults, parents and teachers, to take them to the next level and keep trying new things or new ways of doing things. We hope this lesson on increasing interest has been helpful to you. We'll see you in the next lesson where we teach you how to take these interests and incorporate them into the learning process itself. If you haven't already, do check out our free online resource platform, Autism at Home, which has all the corresponding articles and necessary downloadables for you. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Instagram and Facebook to stay updated. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you soon.